Good. Hello, everybody. On behalf of SEMA, I want to welcome you to the second webinar in a series of webinars that are sponsored by SEMA. This is really a neat thing I think that SEMA is doing, to be able to present a lot of great ideas from a lot of people, and I think that's only going to be a way to grow the pond here in the industry. And I hope that in the future, industry executives will be willing to share their experiences with the SEMA membership in the future. This and future webinars will be available on YouTube for future viewing. And there are some instructions at the end of this webinar as to how you can get a copy of this deck. Also at the end of this presentation, we will have some time for questions and answers and for further discussion. Today's presentation is on growing great brands, something I've had experience with over the years. And before we get into the actual presentation, I'm going to give you a little idea about some of my background. I went to college at University of Arizona, moved out to Orange County, and I went to work for a company called Wild West Stores, a large retailer which is similar to an Urban Outfitters in size. And I did that between 1971 and 1983. I did that with my business partner, Paul Carr, who's been my business partner through all of my experiences since those days. In 1984 to 1994, we were Gotcha's largest licensee. We did the pants, jackets, knit shirts, and accessories, and we ultimately sold our interest in Gotcha to Merrill Lynch in 1994. We then, and probably during that same period of time, we did CNC companies. And we built the Rusty brand, the Red Sand brand, other brands like Level 7, Skins Game, and Liquid Force. In 2000, we hooked up with Jeff Kelly, and we built the Sanook brand with him. And we really had a good time, Paul and we had a great team of people, and built that company up. And in 2011, we were able to sell that to Deckers Outdoor. For those of you who don't know who Deckers is, they are the people that do UGG shoes. Today, I'm a partner in L-Space, the high-end swimwear brand. Beautiful product. We have a great partner, Paul and I, Monica Weiss, who started the brand and who continues as the brand president. I'm also the CEO of RepSpark Systems, and RepSpark is basically a platform for sales entry, reporting, a lot of other things that RepSpark does. It's really a great support product for your sales team and really can take sales to the next level. We do what we call total order lifecycle management, which has sophisticated order building wizards, digital order pad, mobile tools, management dashboards, robust and relevant reporting, all served up on a real-time basis. So let's get into the presentation. It's all about growing great brands. And over the past 30 years, I've been blessed with a really high number of great business opportunities, great business partners like Paul Carr, Jeff Kelly, and today Monica Weiss. And I work with some really amazing people and that have been very, very talented. And finally, I had some great mentors as well along the way. But when you look at successful branding, it's really a lot more than just a brand name or a logo. Brand building is more than great products or brilliant marketing. It's even more than inspired leaders and a collection of great talented people. It's really about continuous, exceptional execution, and execution on a number of disciplines that really are working all at the same time to make a brand successful. So today I'm going to be discussing what I believe are the real core components that separate great brands and great companies from all the others. And what I'm talking about first today, or we're going to be discussing today, is the consumer, who's really the reason for being and why you're successful. Second, I'm going to talk a little bit about branding and how to build a brand. I'm going to talk about disruptive marketing and how to reset the rules in the marketplace. I'm also going to be talking about how to be a servant leader to really take care of your team, how to build a winning team. And then I'm going to talk about planning, because as I always say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And without good planning, you're not going to be able to really get anywhere. I'm going to focus on innovation, the importance of innovation and how it should be part of the process of your success. I'm going to be talking about managing key processes. And finally, how to drive great financial performance. First, let's talk about the consumer, the reason for being. I believe that People need to define their target consumer in a very real way, a way that you can touch that consumer and you can think about them just like you think about your friends or your family or people that you know. And so I think every brand needs to decide what that consumer's DNA is, their entire persona, their lifestyle, the kinds of things they do, and the kinds of life they live. With Sanuk, we had developed a concept, a guy called Happy You. He wasn't the coolest guy in school, but he was the guy that if he didn't show up at a party, the party was never the same. We developed a list of all the different essential criteria of who that guy was, who was Happy You. We have the same thing with L-Space. We have a girl we call Elle. Elle has a whole lot of different things that make her unique and make her a unique person, right down to the fact that at the bottom of her purse, she has a little bit of sand from the beach. So the idea is to find your customer, define it with your group, and make sure your entire organization understands who is your primary customer and what is that customer like, and why is that customer, and what does that customer want. The next thing I think you need to understand who your customers are, but more important, what they want. And I think it's very important to understand how you will deliver to them day in and day out consistent value now and in the future. Because when you look at building a brand, it's not a one-time event. It's a long-term event, and it's a journey. And as your brand expands, so will the products range that you offer, so will your marketing, and so will your consumer. So you have to have that sort of really fixed in your mind. And the best thing is to write that down in a series of planning sessions so that you really have crystallized who your customer is. The next thing I think that's really important is that you are in the business to attract more customers over your competition. The only way you're going to do that is by delighting your customer. Make your customer a complete, total fan of what you do. And you do that with your products and services, and you make those products and services so that they're different, they're unique, and they can't be matched. Sanuk, we had the most comfortable shoes. There was no question that what we did with Sanuk is made a shoe that was so comfortable and it was so compelling to buy that once somebody put it on, they wanted to buy more and more of that product. Also, it's greatest to be the best at what you do. It's also great to be first. Value is important. And also engineering is important. Look how Stance has reinvented the sock business by having products that are engineered, and they not only look great, but they feel good on the feet. The next thing I think that's important is exceed expectations. Your competition decides what the status quo is, and what you want to do is exceed those expectations consistently and do it all the time. And don't just be predictable, be predictably great and do it all the time. And that is all about leading in the marketplace. The next thing that's important is managing your brand's message and managing that at every consumer touch point. We're going to get into a little bit more of that when we talk about marketing. The next thing is social marketing. Social marketing is here today. It's not going away. And it's really changed the way we talk to our customer. And it's very important that your brand has a one-to-one relationship with that customer and that you get your customer feedback and it goes back and forth between whoever's working your social marketing program. Really, really important. Sanuk, we had social marketing all the way back to 2007. And by about 2008, we had 3 people that were basically writing our content and consistently creating that customer engagement that was so important for us to relate to our customers. And we tied that back to product, we tied that back to team, we tied that back to our brand ambassadors. But the idea there was a one-to-one customer relationship where our customer felt like they were part of the brand. Next thing I think that's really important is that every level of your organization is committed to deliver on the brand promise, your retailers and your consumers. This requires your organization to have a certain level of alignment. And that means you have to have communication within the organization so that everybody within your company, from customer service to design to sales, really understands what that message is and why you are important, because they all have a part of delivering that customer image and that branding. Next, I think it's important to build designer and buyer relationships with one-to-one communication. I always like to see designers on the sales floor in the stores and some of our best customers every once in a while so that they can see what the customer decision-making process is. Why is the customer selecting this product over the next, and why are they getting excited about your product, and more importantly, why are they buying some of your competitors' products? Designers should always be on the sales floor at some particular point in time during each season, particularly when your products are on the floor. The next is that everything in the business really should be aligned. Your goals, your strategies, your plans, your systems, and your processes, they all have to be aligned, and they have to work in harmony to consistently deliver and exceed your customer expectations. I see so many brands, so many companies where these things aren't aligned, where everything's kind of going in different directions, and it's very haphazard. And what you're losing is the synergistic effect of all of those things working together to deliver and exceed customer expectations. I think another thing that's really important, and I think a lot of people don't do it, is set up metrics that really measure the satisfaction of your brand satisfaction measures against your competition and against what your goals are. Once you understand what consumers think about you, what they think about your products, you're in a perfect position to be able to improve your performance by making concrete plans and actions to drive those metrics up and to drive that customer satisfaction up. I think another thing that a lot of people do or don't do is CEOs talking to owners at the retail level. Reach out to your retailers, get their feedback, talk to them. When Paul and I got involved with L-Space at the very beginning, one of the things we did is we talked to our retailers, and we found out that a lot of the retailers loved L-Space, but we were a little too skimpy. We have this thing called Itsy Bitsy, which is a very tiny back bathing suit bottom, which I, of course, love, and most of the men do, but some places that wasn't enough coverage. So once we heard feedback from our retailers, we began to add a couple of other coverages, still kept the Itsy Bitsy, but we were able to really expand the brand because now suddenly we had product that could be sold in stores that maybe we were a little afraid of our brand before because it was a little too sexy. And I think finally have an ongoing continuous improvement process in place so that you're constantly improving the way that you're servicing your customer and fulfilling the brand experience at the retail level. The next area that I'm going to cover is it's all about the brand. And I think the most important thing to start out there is to think about your brand as an icon. How can I make my brand an icon? How can I become iconic in this industry? There's a lot of brands out there, a lot of product out there, a lot of people trying to do the same thing that you're trying to do. But if there's some way that you can figure out how to distinguish yourself so that you become iconic, that is so important. And that's what we did with Sanuk, and that's what we've done with L-Space as well. They're both iconic brands in their own way. In Sanuk, it was through iconic products and iconic branding, iconic marketing. We're very unique. We were very funky, very different, very inclusive. People loved what we did. And of course, there was nothing wrong with, of course, it wasn't too hard when you had a product like the Sidewalk Surfer, which was a completely new and unique construction of product that we were able to drive our business. In L-Space, we had the Fringe, and now we've moved on to a lot of other products. But in all cases, iconic product and iconic branding will help make your brand an icon. And once you become an icon, it's very, very difficult for you to lose that position in the marketplace. Next thing I think is really important when you're looking at your brand and you're thinking about your brand, think about it from the outside in rather than the inside out. Take a look at your brand as a customer would take a look at your brand. Look at it from a product standpoint. Look at it as it's featured in the retail stores that sell your product. Look at it how your customer is seeing your brand through your social marketing, through your advertising. Always think about your brand as the consumer sees it from the outside in rather from the inside out. And once you've gone through an exercise in doing that, you'll find that there's probably a lot of things that you'd like to see different or improve in the way that you're approaching your market. Next, have original products and great marketing. Both of those things working together will consistently help make your brand special and will continually and must continually shout your brand's unique message. Study consumer reactions, get in the head of the consumer, and look at how all of those things are working synergistically to communicate your brand to the consumer. Next thing that's I think is really important is the whole idea of social marketing today. I've been in marketing for 30 years, And the social marketing is a completely different way of looking at marketing. It's turned the whole thing on its ear. It used to be what we said about our brands, what our marketing said, what our advertising said, what our television ads said, however we were communicating with the consumer. Today, it's not that way anymore. Today, it's not what you say. It's what they say about the brand. So it's incredibly important to use social marketing and create that one-on-one relationship with the consumer. And that's all done through great content, and down to a point where at Chinook we had 3 people writing our content, and all 3 people wrote content in the same way. You wouldn't be able to read something on the blog and know that it was from one writer or the other. Everything was consistent. They all said the same thing. They all said the same words, and they really got in the head of Mr. Happy You, and that was the way they communicated on social marketing. It really worked. Because it was, again, very focused and very much the same message. I think another thing that people forget today, and it was interesting to review Bob McKnight's speech at the SEMA event in Mexico, is pricing product. He talked about the race to the bottom. I don't believe in that. I believe that if you have a strong brand, you have pricing power. And I think if you price to a premium, that's often going to work and be successful for you. I mean, it kind of depends on where your brand is and where you're positioned within your competitors, against your competitors. But if you can do it, premium pricing is great because it gives you the ability to do a lot of other things that you wouldn't if you had lower pricing and lower margins. Next thing you need to do is ensure that not only yourself, but every single person in your organization understands your brand and your brand's reason for being, your brand's DNA, your competitive edge, and your competitive positioning. It's really important to be able to do that. And anyone that's in top management should be able to very quickly articulate those things in just a few words. I've seen people do word planning and wordsmithing and all that kind of stuff, but the idea is to have it very clear, very understanding, and in a few words so people can remember it, almost tattooed on the back of your eyelids. And I think that when you have that and that's extended out to your sales force, out to your marketing people, your brand ambassadors, if everybody is thinking about your brand in the same way because they've been taught that or they've learned that through a series of meetings, you'll have that much more impact in the marketplace because everything will be working together in a very synergistic way. I think another thing that's important is brand name everything. When we do Chinook, we had names for every single product. We had the whole Sidewalk Surfer group. We had Vagabond series. We had names. We had other products that fell into that. Use those names, advertise those names, promote those names, communicate them, because I think that is so important. It really does work. And I think it even works when you're talking about processes, competencies, things that you value within your organization. If you can brand name those things, like in RepSpark, we have a thing called a pricing wizard, or we have other wizards that do other things within the system. Those basic words become part of the overall mix that we're trying to communicate, and those things become a great way to communicate to your customer. And it works. It works everywhere. I think the next thing that's really important is keeping your branding, advertising, marketing messages, and consumer appeals really, really simple. People get too complicated in that kind of stuff, and people don't have enough time to watch or listen or read. They want quick answers. And today, with everybody living off their mobile telephone, obviously that shortens the cycle on just about everything. So if you can keep your appeals very simple, very easy to understand, you're going to be much more successful. But also you have to continue to maintain a very high level of distinctiveness that makes you different. So quick, easy, make sure the customer gets it, and if it's simple, the customer will get it that much quicker. Next thing that I think is really important, and I see it really working for some brands in our industry, and I see it not working for others, is the whole idea of message management. Brand messages and alignment and consistency always wins. If they keep seeing the same thing, hearing the same thing, doesn't have to be visually look the same way necessarily, but if they consistently hear that brand message, that will win. That will drill into their head. It's not a shoe, it's a sandal. Work great, smile, pass it on. Work great for Chinook. Those messages we told the consumer again and again and again, and those things began to stick in the mind of the consumer. And that made all the advertising that came after it so much more successful because it was built on a very strong foundation of consistent in, time out message management. And you do that by controlling the message at all brand touch points. And when I talk about touch points, I'm talking about all the places that a consumer will come in contact with your brand. These are the L-space touch points. But if you look at every single one of these things, those are all the people, all the places that people are going to be touching your brand, seeing your message, seeing your visual, touching your product, and otherwise coming away with some sort of an impression. And if you're doing a great job in message management, that impression will be built one upon the other, and it will have a consistent message. As that consistent messages will have a complete synergistic effect of cumulatively telling the consumer what you want them to hear. One look, one feel, one message. The lack of that creates tons of confusion, and brands that don't get this right spend a lot of money in advertising, and there's no way that they're getting the synergistic impact or the full impact of what they'd like to be getting if they don't use good message management. Next thing that I think is really important is the idea of being disruptive. Disruptive doesn't mean that you're necessarily making a mess of things, but I think it's the idea of resetting the rules of the marketplace. We always talked about at Sanuk about being disruptive. We wanted to be disruptive. We wanted to have people go, who are those guys? What are they doing? And we did that in everything we did. And most important thing that we did with Sanuk was trying to get ourselves into a marketplace when Reef owned a wall. I mean, Reef basically owned the sandal wall. There was no way that we were going to be able to punch Sanuk into that product range, into that wall. So we decided to do our own rack, and we did a number of racks that you could expand, and pretty soon we actually had a tremendous amount of market share in the store. We hadn't unseated Reef, but we created our own environment. And we also redefined the customer experience because those racks were self-service oriented. So a customer could come in, grab a shoe off the rack, put it on. If it fit, great, they'd walk up to the register and buy it, rather than waiting for a salesperson to come and find it, or even waiting for a salesperson today is what most people do when they go into a retail store. But the idea was redefining the experience so the consumer could go to the rack, find the product, and find it quickly and not have to wait for somebody to come and help them. So those were two ways that we were very disruptive, and we also redefined the customer experience at Sanuk, and it turned out to be very successful for us. I think another thing that is very disruptive today is selling wholesale hasn't really changed in 100 years. People roll on their racks, they have their order books, they have their catalogs, they present their product line. They've been doing that same thing the same way for over 100 years. So I think today people need to move up to state-of-the-art selling systems. And there's a number of them out there. Obviously, one of them is RepSpark. But I think that if you do that, you can really improve the brand selling process and take your selling to another level. The other thing that's important is having a selling system like that provides you the foundation for creating a selling system for your brand. It also provides you the B2B capabilities that you need to really be in the driver's seat today in the selling environment. More and more people are going to these types of systems, and if you don't, you're just sort of behind the eight ball. Next thing that I think is really important is, and a lot of manufacturers don't think this way, but I used to be a retailer before I became a manufacturer. And I realized that the most important thing for me was making money with the brands that sold my product or that provided me my products. And I gave more money to the people that made me more money. It was pretty simple. So the idea is find ways that you can make sure that you can help your retailers to increase their profit, increase their margins, increase their turnover. And I think that if you do that, you can beat your competition. And the concept to really think about all the time is gross margin, return on inventory, or return on investment. That is the idea of having less markdowns, less product on the floor, more fill-ins, and basically taking back sometimes product. At Sanuk, we really focused on creating high productivity and high profitability for our retailers. We shipped about 80% of our product at least 3 to 4 weeks before the start date. We had product in stock all the time so that the retailers could depend on us to do fill-ins, and we took product back. That meant we were more profitable than the next guy who didn't do those things. We had usually a higher turnover. That meant they had less investment. We had stock available within a week that would be back in their stores. And it was amazing how retailers would come back and say, I make so much money with you guys. I love it. So anyway, the idea is find ways that your brand can help the retailer make money. They will help you make a lot of money by buying more of your products. And kind of what we did in that case with Sanuk is we sort of led the market on our own terms. We shifted paradigms. We shifted old ideas. And I think today a lot of people don't want to change. They don't want to come up with new ideas and new ways to sort of reset the rules of the marketplace. I think another way to do this is to use social marketing 3.0. And when I talk about social marketing 3.0, I'm talking about taking it to the next level. Not only using your own people for content, but reaching out to bloggers, team writers, fashionistas, even your retailers can start talking about your brand. And it's how you create a platform for communication so that you've just extended your brand marketing team, your viral marketing team into the next level. That's what viral marketing is all about. It's about taking an idea, communicating that to 3 people, they communicate it to 8 people each, and pretty soon you've got this web of communication going all over the place. And don't forget your team writers or your brand ambassadors. Those guys should be blogging, those guys should be online, those guys should be doing their own promotion and promoting your brand in the process. If they're not doing it, you should find a way to teach them to do it, but it should be in everybody's contract today and going forward. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about 3.0. It's using all those different points of communication. I think an obvious one is know, engage, and involve, and win over your retailers' gatekeepers. The gatekeepers are the people who decide who's going to do what in a store. It could be a salesperson in one store. It could be a buyer in another store. It could be the owner's wife in another store. Have your people know who those gatekeepers are. Good salesmen do know who they are, but it would be good if the brand knew as well. But win those people over. Find ways that you can make those people really big fans of your brand. Next, I think it's important to have new tools to expand your brand services. Always continue to find ways to sharpen your tool set so that you have other ways so that you can expand your brand services, make your brand easier to do business with, and you'll get more orders. Next, I think it's important to continually reinvent the consumer's brand experience. And this is done by obviously going back to the idea of message management, but it's about marketing, events, social marketing, things that you do on the sales floor. Constantly have things that reinvent that so that you're sort of outdating your last best idea, so that your brand doesn't look like it's static or boring. Your brand looks like it's very progressive and coming up with new things all the time. We always did that with Sanuk, and we do that with Elspace as well. You'll see beautiful windows. You'll see build outs. You'll see great product presentations. You'll see visuals. All those kinds of things continually changing, continually making your brand look great within each individual retail store. Next, I think it's obviously important to exceed your competitors' consumer expectations. Find out what your competitors are doing well and find a way to outdo them in every single thing that they do well, but more importantly, outdoing them in the things that you do well. Another thing that's important today, I think, is building retail partnerships, the idea of consultative selling. If you have good retail selling systems, you actually have a platform to do that because you'll have the B2B capability, you can do consultative order management and consultative order building, all those things done through B2B, and also the idea of helping retailers out when they have problems. But the idea is to build that partnership so that the retailer feels like you're caring about their needs, and then they're going to help you care about yours. so important is to have consultative selling. Next is always frustrate the competition, use disruptive sales tactics, compelling products, and intrusive marketing to stay ahead. I think those things are all important, and I think also to think as a predator. Predatory marketing means you're going to be eating somebody else's lunch rather than them eating yours. So anyway, those are some of the ideas and thoughts on resetting the rules of the marketplace. Next thing I think that's really important, I hold this near and dear because when I talk about being able to build these brands with great people, I'm talking about I also have to think about the importance of taking care of those people. So I think it's important that we all think of ourselves as a servant leader. And we do that by, first of all, showing a real caring interest for each team member's well-being. Know who they are, know what makes them tick, know them, know their heart, and understand who those people are. Very, very important. I think it's also important to build open and honest relationships, not only between you as a leader and your staff, but encourage that between staff and staff. Because if everybody's working together and everybody's watching each other's back, and it's all done on the foundation of honesty, you're going to have a team that can become incredibly productive. I think another thing that's important is when people have their vision, mission, and values and culture, if you have leaders that don't live those, then it's going to be very difficult for your team to adopt those. So every single manager, every single leader has to live the vision, the mission, and the values and the culture of that company. Very, very important. Otherwise, you're kind of a phony. The next thing I think that's important is the vision thing. It's really important that your entire organization understands what your brand's vision is and understands their role in making that happen. And I think you do that by having time-based goals and strategies that are adapted and adopted and presented to the team so that they have a really good understanding of what the vision is and what their role is in delivering on that vision. With Sonoco, it was all about comfort and all about fun and all about having a funky approach to the marketplace. All of our people kind of thought that way, acted that way, and you just had a different feeling when you walked in the building about what was going on there. Next, I think it's important to align the organization to own and deliver on a simple set of brand differentiators. As you establish your brand plan, you'll establish the things that make you special. And it's important that those things that make you special are owned by certain people in the organization, be it customer service, design, marketing, branding, brand ambassadors. Each of those people should have a set of things that they own to be able to contribute to the overall brand differentiation, because every single one of those people are a touch point. Every single one of those people are part of how your brand is presented and thought about out in the marketplace. Next thing that's important is set high standards. I believe in negotiating methods, not standards. Set standards, make them high, make them lofty, make them even a stretch standard, and then be sure that you measure people on those things as well. Next thing that I think is really important is wins, celebrating wins. Have fun. Have fun with people. Give them credit, and give credit to those people who have done great things liberally. Never steal a great idea. Never say that idea was yours. Even if it wasn't yours, it's really important to make sure that people understand that those ideas are by the key people that have made it happen. Next is be authentic, be real. You can't fool your people. And I think the next one is something that's very important, is trust is something that's earned from your staff. And it must be re-earned every day with your staff and your consumers. You don't get trust. People start, they give you a little bit of it, but the rest of it is earned by doing really a good job, by delivering on what you say and making sure that you meet your commitments. Last item is be humble and lose the ego. At Sonoco, we had a box at the front, and that basically said ego on it, and it said, leave your ego here. It was really important that we didn't have a lot of ego. Even though we were doing great things and individuals in the building were doing great things, Jeff Kelly was doing great things, we tried to keep the ego down because ego just basically blocks communication. It makes people less accessible, and it doesn't work. And every leader, if they have it, they should get rid of it. Next thing I think that's really important is build a winning team. And here I think it's important to have exceptional and capable management group so that the people that are in place are high quality people, management, or the individuals that people can look up to. I think the next thing that's really important is have superstars in every game breaker position. Every organization has certain positions that are vital to the success of that organization. As a leader, we need to make sure that we've got superstars in every single one of those game breaker positions, because that will help you go forward and be successful, because those people are highly competent and highly capable. I think the next thing is hire for culture. Now, culture is so important in an organization because that defines the way we do things, the way we feel, the way we interface, the way we relate to each other. And I think culture fit is so important, and it's more important than somebody that's passionate about the sport you're in, and even more important than somebody who has a higher skill level based on their resume. I never hire somebody that has more skills but doesn't fit the organization from a culture standpoint. And every time I violated that rule, I've been disappointed. So the idea is, if you've got three people, one is very passionate, one has got great skills, one has got some of that, but maybe not as much, but he's totally a culture fit, I'd go with the culture fit every time. Next thing that's important is hiring Swiss Army knives. I believe on the way up, a small company needs to have people who are capable of doing a lot of things. And I don't want to have somebody that works for me that says, I'm not going to do that, and steps back from a challenge or something that I've asked them to do or something that the organization needs them to do. As you develop people that are Swiss Army knives, you give them the ability to do more things than they did before. And you're actually stretching, excuse me, I forgot to advance this. You're actually stretching the team to new goals. And so the idea is to have people who are Swiss Army knives, who can do lots of things, who you can continue to stretch them. I think the next thing that's really important is having a highly resilient and competitive culture. Within your organization, as you build your culture, you want to have people who are competitive. You want to have people who want to win. You want to have people who are going to contribute to your overall organizational success, and people who are going to think in a competitive way. We're out here to win. We're out here to compete. We're out here to get the business. And competition is not something that anybody should be pulled back from. So you want to have a culture that can compete and that will compete and that will win. Number 6, I think it's important to keep your organization flat, lean, and agile. Organizations that have too many levels of people are organizations where things don't get done. It's really important to have a small team, a focused team, and not a lot of levels of management. I think the next thing that's really important is making decisions quickly. Organizations that make decisions slowly are organizations that have politics and bureaucracy in them, and that just doesn't work. You become like the government, and nobody wants to work in that kind of an environment. And one of the best examples of a company that doesn't have that is a company that sees opportunities, makes decisions quickly, isn't afraid of making the wrong decision once in a while, but also an organization that's open to fixing it if they do make a wrong decision. But the important thing is, when there's opportunities, when there's things that need to be reacted to, make those decisions quickly, implement those programs, and run to the finish line. Next, I think within a winning team is accountability. I think accountability is so important. And we're talking about accountability of every single team member in every single position, that they are responsible for results and publish results and goals, so that you're actually always measuring your organization against the results and against the goals. Another thing that's important is not having too many people. If you've got a group of people who are a little bit stressed, who are always running, who are always making things happen, they don't have the time to become bureaucratic. They don't have the time to waste time. They're going to get things done all the time. So always keep your team lean and mean, and keep them challenged all the time. Another concept that I learned along the way is having cross-functional teams to focus on problems and issues. In other words, not just the distribution center or the fulfillment center or customer service, Don't just have those people, but have people from other functional areas so that when problems come up and they need to be solved, throw a group of cross-functional people at it, have a leader, but you're going to get a much better end result because you'll have increased focus and you won't be missing a lot of things along the way. Another thing that's important is having continuous improvement in your organization, pursue growth and learning, and also provide an atmosphere and environment where people can actually go to college, continue their education, continue their training. And in the companies that I've been involved with, we've participated in the cost of having somebody do that. And we've never lost anybody once we've done it, even though they've actually increased their value dramatically to the organization. Next one I think is really important, number 12 here, which is remember that your worst performer establishes the lowest level of your company's acceptable performance. That means if you've got 10 superstars or 10 people who are really highly productive in a group, and the 11th person isn't, that 11th person is probably going to bring the productivity down from the other people, because they're going to see that that's an acceptable level of performance. So what you want to do is constantly clean out the lower performers and replace them with new people who will hopefully aspire to higher levels of productivity. Next thing I think is really important is have fun. Every brand that I've been involved in, we've had a lot of fun. We haven't taken ourselves too seriously, and we've enjoyed the ride. I think the last thing that's really important is no shitheads. Shitheads basically can sink a company. So if you've got people who have bad attitudes, who aren't part of the team, who don't fit the culture, who don't, for some reason, otherwise work within the environment of your company, smartest thing is for you to get rid of those people and move them out. So again, most importantly, no shitheads. Now we're going to get into one of my really important areas that I think is super important, is planning. And I always say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I think one of the basis of planning and the foundation for planning is having a robust information system. A system that's capable of providing timely, accurate, and actionable information to every decision maker. It's important to not only have data coming out, but have that data in a form that people can make decisions on. I see so many companies today, especially in my position with RepSpark, where they have data, but they have to have 4 or 5 people massaging that data through spreadsheets to get their information. Or they have to do other things to get that data because it's not served up to them in a format that they can make decisions. So have a robust information system, but have it producing data that's timely, accurate, and actionable, and in a position or in a format where decision makers can make the decisions that they need to be. It's a shame when people are trying to find data and spending a lot of time trying to create it, because it leaves very little time left to make decisions based on that data. Next is planning is about creating long-time lasting competitive advantages. As you do your planning, always be thinking about what's going to make us more competitive, what's going to help make the brand better. It's more than just planning for products and marketing. It's planning to have that consumer look back at your brand and have you continually building on your competitive advantages. Another thing that's really important is what got you here, or what got you here won't necessarily be what will get you there. And it's really important to know, to watch as you grow, to see when your old things that were old standards, your old ideas, your old processes, your old procedures, and sometimes your old staff aren't the people that are going to get you to the next level. So you constantly have to be looking at modernizing and updating what you do. Next is, I think you need to plan for consistent improvements in your operational performance. Always be measuring your performance and be looking at ways to improve it. And when we get into the financial area, we're going to be talking about a little bit more about that, about how to do that and how to measure your performance and how to turn those into actual planning goals. Number 5 is to define annual and seasonal short-term, long-term, and goals and objectives. It's really important to have medium, short, and long-term goals that you want to accomplish on the company, because that gives you benchmarks that you can measure along the way and gives you the ability to track your performance. And be sure that those things are reviewed on a regular basis so that people are constantly looking at, and you're constantly looking as management, as to how are we doing, and are there any short-term or mid-term course corrections that we need to make so that we can be assured that we're going to accomplish our goals. Next is have a comprehensive set of tactical plans that, when executed, will achieve your goals and objectives. Goals have to have action plans and tactical plans dedicated to their accomplishment, which are specific actions that people need to be doing at lower levels of the organization. Also, it's important to have short, medium action plans in each department so that each department knows what they need to do to make their contribution towards the overall goals and objectives for the company. Next, communicate your brand goals and objectives throughout the organization so that each person understands their roles in the brand's success. I think that's so important. I've kind of covered that in a couple of different ways. It doesn't mean that they see your big goal. It maybe means that they see some tactical plans or tactical goals, but make sure that everybody understands what their role is. And once they do, you will see that the productivity will be much higher, and you're going to have a much better chance of reaching your goals because everybody in the organization at every level has a very good understanding of what they need to do and what their role is in contributing to the brand's success. And that sort of goes to the next thing. It's broaden staff involvement as you do your planning, and that'll help align the individuals to the individual actions towards the attainment of the goals and vision and objectives. And finally, I use a thing that I used when I was in retail. Oops, sorry about that. Here's the messed up on not advancing my slide here. I used aligned 52-week calendars in each functional department. Really, really important to have each department have a 52-week calendar. That is so essential in planning. Again, by the way, this slide deck will be available to you at the end of the presentation. We'll tell you how you can get a hold of that. I'm sorry I didn't advance that to the next slide. I'm not going to make that mistake again. Next thing I think that's really important is innovation. Every brand has to be innovative and have innovation everywhere within the organization. And it starts by creating iconic and visionary products. The next thing is you always differentiate yourself on product design, product details, product engineering. Look how, again, using Stance as an example, how they've completely reinvented the sock business by having just amazing product design. Next is I think you need to democratize the design ecosystem. Open it up so that everyone can make product and marketing ideas and improvement suggestions. You'll find that there's great ideas outside of the design room in other parts of the organization. Next thing that's really important is innovation. It isn't just about the design of the product, it's about your whole brand works and approaches your marketplace. So innovation should be the thing that drives all decision making within a brand. And you do that by inspiring a culture of innovation. There's an adventurous, creative, agile, and adaptive and open-minded group of people who are constantly looking for ways to improve just about everything within the organization. So important to have a culture of innovation. Next, I think it's really important to have a creative dissatisfaction with the status quo. Always be looking at ways to improve everything by not being happy with what you're doing today. It's never good enough. It always has to be improved. It always can and will be improved. And as I've built a number of the brands that I've been involved in, we were constantly finding new ways of doing things and new ways of making things happen that we hadn't thought of before. And if we were happy with what we were doing just because it was good or it worked, we wouldn't have had those other improvements. Also very important is obsolete products and designs before they exceed their useful life. You should always have the next advance. Don't wait for your competitors to come out with those advancements. You should always have those. And when you do those, you'll be building each new idea on the foundation of the old idea rather than trying to unseat your competition because they outthought you or outcreated you. Another thing that's very important is no such thing as a dumb idea or a dumb question. Always be open to dumb questions and dumb ideas because you'll find out that maybe they aren't so dumb and that people are asking a question that really needs to be looked at. Next is always support risk-taking within your company. I think it's very important for brands, companies, management systems, leaders to have a freedom to fail. Every idea, every concept, everything that you think of in a brand isn't going to work. And so sometimes if it doesn't work, there shouldn't be a lot of blame for those ideas that don't work. You should just be concentrating on the solution and moving on. That provides an environment where people have a freedom to fail. 10, next is customers respond to beautiful, clever, and intuitive products. When I look at the Sanook products, when I look at some of the things that we're doing today in L-Space, Stance is another great idea. Skull Candy is a great idea, a great company. They have unique stuff that's very intuitive. It's very engaging to the consumer. The consumer likes the product. They look at the product. They find it's very interesting. Next area is it's not about design for designer's sake. It's about making better stuff that people buy instead of your competitors' stuff. It's always really important that people look at their product line, not from the designer's point of view, but from the sales point of view, from the retailer's point of view, and from the consumer's point of view. So that you're always looking at things that are going to work better or do a better job or improve the satisfaction of the customer. Next, I think it's really important to understand your operations. So many brands don't ship on time. They don't ship complete. They don't end up shipping the best quality product. And that's because people aren't managing the basic key processes within an organization. So I think it's really important for management, for leadership, to get their hands dirty and make sure that your organization is executing flawlessly. You can ship on time. You can ship before the start date. You can fulfill every order. You can complete an order with one shipment, every order, if you make sure that that's a priority and you look at your organization to make sure that things that are occurring within your organization are contributing to flawless execution. Again, here, information is power. Robust reporting drives better actions, better decision making, and you give the ability to track, analyze, react, and manage your business. I think it's important to apply successful, effective IT support systems. IT support systems, good ERP systems, really provide the basis to really manage your key processes. Without those systems in place, it's very difficult to do that. And today there's more and more software as a service solutions that are available to people so that you don't have to make that big original or big investment necessarily to have some really competent and qualified systems to support what you do. Next, I think that's really important is operational discipline. Discipline gets it done. It provides efficiency and it provides focus. So it's really important for management to manage the details. That is what gets done and delivers on those results. So understand the details, understand how your organization works, even understand how your suppliers work, so that you basically have a really good understanding of how to put all that stuff together and continue to make it work in a much more efficient way. Part of that is created by having published standards of results and performance standards within your organization. Very, very important to have published standards of what you want. Like, for example, when we built Sanook, one of our published standards was the start date's the only date, and that was pushed throughout the entire organization. That gave us the ability to ship on time, ship on the start date, and to ship a full order rather than 3 or 4 shipments against an order. Really important to have those published standards all the way through your organization, to have them fully understood and fully supported within your organization, both by the people and by the processes that you have within your organization. One of the things we always did at CNC is every quarter we had department performance tracking meetings. We measured, we tracked results, and we drove efficiencies that way. Each department had a set of critical result factors. Each department reported on those factors, and we constantly tried to weigh in on finding ways to improve our productivity, improve order turnaround time, improve how much time it took to take a return from the back stock room and get it back on the shelf to reship it. Every single one of those key functions were managed. How fast do we turn around an order in the warehouse once we receive it from our manufacturers? How many days or hours does it take to get it on the pick shelf so that it can be picked. Every single one of those activities has a way of measuring it, and you only want to measure the essential ones, the ones that are the most important. But by setting up those measurements and then tracking the results in department performance tracking meetings, that's the best way. And we also put in some incentives to get people to drive improvements and make those things work better. I think it's also important that you demand efficient and effective processes and procedures, constantly understand those details, and have someone that's responsible for each one of those functional things within your organization. Another thing that I think is really important, and this can save you on your bottom line, is simplify everything. Less paper, less steps, less work, less stress, fewer people, and lower costs. Driving real-time efficiency is also important, and I think every organization should have key performance indicators that are at the top line and the middle line and the lower line of management, and you're always measuring your performance against those KPIs, and that will drive key performance improvements within your organization. All of those things will make your organization more productive. It'll drive your costs down, and it will bring your overall expenses down, as well as improving the throughput and overall performance of your organization. Another thing we learned over time was to push things back up to our suppliers. Retailers are doing that today to us as manufacturers. They're pushing their inventory responsibilities back on their manufacturers. So we as vendors are carrying more stock today in our warehouse that used to be in the store sales floor. You can do the same thing with your suppliers. Push as much of that responsibility back up to your manufacturers, back up to your other suppliers that supply you everything else, other things within your organization and other things that you need to run your business. And finally, remember that the best solutions to problems are always known by the people who are the closest to the problems. Those people that are a little further down within the organization usually have the solutions to what needs to be done to make your organization more productive and to solve your problems. Next thing that I think is really important is driving financial performance. Paul and I, in the CNC days and today with L-Space and with RepSpark, performance is driven. Financial performance is driven because we understand our businesses very, very well. We know what makes the business tick, and we know how to convert those ideas and those concepts into costs, and we understand every single one of our cost centers very well. So I think it's really important to have very tight books, have a great CFO or head of accounting, and I think it's also important to use outside accountants because the outside accountants kind of in the same way of looking from the outside into your business from a marketing standpoint, accountants can look at your business from the outside in from your financial importance or productivity. Very, very important, I think, to use outside accountants. I think it's really important to understand your performance metrics, and I think that every top management, every departmental manager needs to understand what their metrics are and have P&L intimacy. In other words, they really understand what's driving those numbers, how to improve them, and those numbers also must be managed on a regular basis. And that really contributes to the next thing, which is what gets measured gets done. I've learned this over the years and seen it happen time and time again, that once you start to develop a matrix or a number or a performance indicator or some way to track the performance of that item or that issue or that cost center, you'll find that you'll begin to see improvements because, number one, you wouldn't have known that you were improving it if you didn't have a metric for it. And then you start measuring the metric, pretty soon you're down the path on finding ways to bring a cost down or bring turnaround time improvements up or other type of operational improvements to make things happen better. So anyway, what gets measured gets done. Find metrics and measure them and hold people accountable. Next one I think is really important is gross margin magic. To me, it's always been, and Paul and I have always kind of run our businesses this way, it's not just sales growth, it's gross margin growth. So we're constantly looking for ways to grow our gross margin. And that gross margin is obviously a function of your initial price points, your going in initial margins. It's a function of how much you buy, how much you end up closing out, how wide your line is. A whole bunch of things go into that gross margin, but really, really keep a tight eye on that. It's much more important to see gross margin growth than it is to see sales growth, although sales growth is great, but really find ways to drive your margins. One of the reasons why Decker was so excited about buying Sanuk is we had margins that were really, really amazing. And we had a very amazing bottom line profit number also that was pretty amazing. And it was through managing that top line, that gross margin, and then also keeping the overall organization lean and mean. So I think part of that achieving of gross margin is to manage the hell out of your inventory. And that obviously starts with pricing. It starts with having a line size that's appropriate to how many styles or what the appropriate assortment is within each category. Really need to think that through. It has to do with the size of your buys, whether you buy it all up front, whether you're buying a little bit at a time. It has to do with your cut size because you've got minimums and everything else in there. But managing those inventories and managing that margin are so important to the success of your business. And gets back to also pricing power. If you're on the pricing wheel down, like Bob was talking about at SEMA, you're going to see your margins shrink. So the idea is hold tight, hold your gross margins, and deliver them year after year. Another thing is tightly manage your expenses. Obviously, the easiest way to do that is through zero-based budgeting. And we do an exercise every year with all of our brands and have forever, where we have zero-based budgeting. They have their last year's information, but it's not to spend more than they spent last year. It's to tell us what do they need this year and what are the things that they don't need this year that they did last year. What did we learn from last year's spending, and how do we roll forward with a reduced cost basis? Next item is don't get in trouble by over-leveraging the business. I see so many businesses that grow too fast. They put too much inventory in their business, so they have a bunch of markdowns, and pretty soon they're losing their capital base because they've over-leveraged, or they've over-leveraged and then they haven't hit the profit numbers. I believe in bootstrapping. I believe in growing a business in a controlled fashion. I've never been in a situation where I've over-leveraged my business, but I've seen it happen to many businesses in this industry, and that can be a real killer. Because you can have a great brand, you can have a great concept, you can have great consumer engagement, but if the company gets in financial difficulties because it's over-leveraged, all of those things go away by the wayside because you're looking at survival as your vision, mission, and goal rather than building your brand. So it's very important to grow in a controlled way and not get over-leveraged. Another thing that's important is continuing every year to find ways to make a higher level of income and improve your overall financial performance. We have always done that. It's one of our credos, and we do it every year, year over year. Constantly manage to higher levels of income and higher levels of financial performance. Next is somebody needs to own every single one of your cost centers. So every cost center should have a manager who owns it and controls it, and it should be a C-level management on the larger areas of your P&L. And then each line item should have an answerable line owner, not necessarily a C-level owner, but somebody that's responsible for that function and the matrix that relate to that function. And that person should be answerable to delivering on their budget and delivering their budget at a level that makes sense for what was budgeted. Every budget should be on schedule. And finally, the last thing that I think is really, really essential is build strong relationships with your source of financing. Ensure that there's true transparency. I work real closely with CIT. Those are great guys. We've had a long relationship, and I hear stories from them sometimes about finding out that a company's in trouble way after the company's down the line towards the drain. If they would have come to them earlier, they might have been able to help them. They might have been able to give them some really good ideas of how they might be able to save their business. But the idea is to ensure true transparency and have no surprises. If you're a bank manager or you're a manager of your account, say at CIT or at Wells Fargo or other people that finance our industry, there's nothing worse than having those guys find out from one of their bosses that one of their clients has a problem. You need to tell that person early, quickly, and you will be amazed at the kind of positive response you'll have when you work forward. So, building great brands. Maybe it is rocket science. Maybe that's what it's all about. But I don't think so. I think it gets down to the old question, are we doing the right things, and are we doing the right things right? And it gets down to just the basics, which I think all have to do with the consumer, how you build a brand, resetting the rules of the marketplace, being a servant leader, creating a winning team, planning everywhere, innovation everywhere, managing key processes, and driving financial performance. Every one of you out there, if you're not already doing these things, and some of these things you guys are probably doing and doing them very well, and if you're not doing some of these things might be some of the ideas and concepts that can help you really make a difference. And now we talk about the most important thing. If you're doing all this well, you're going to frustrate your competition and you're going to win. All right, that sort of concludes the presentation. And I think now we can move on to our chat room. And I'd love to answer some questions that anyone out there might have. And by the way, while you're entering your questions, this CIMA webinar series looks like a great idea, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that happen. And more of these types of webinars happen in the future. Also, if you're interested in getting copies of this, there's a note at the bottom, Kate Shoemaker at repspark.com, and there's her phone number at the bottom of the page. She can send you a copy of this deck so that you'll have that for yourself. All right, so looking forward to any kind of questions that you guys might have. Doesn't look like we have any questions at this particular point. Again, if you guys would like to get a copy of the slide deck, it's available through Kate Shoemaker. And if anybody has any further follow-up questions that you'd like to see answered or any further drill down, I would encourage you to go ahead and contact Kate, and she can get that information for you. I'd like to thank you for attending the seminar today, the webinar. And okay, got a question here. This is from Ben Feeman. Can you talk a little bit about how you've been in love with the business and not so much with the product? For example, I'm sure you don't wear L-Space bikinis, so how are you able to be passionate about that brand? It's a really good question. I would look really stupid in L-Space bikinis, and we haven't yet made mankinis. But I got to tell you, there's nothing more beautiful than a beautiful woman in a very sexy bikini. And I think that I have a passion for the business in general, for operations, for management, for branding. I love all of those things. But I also love seeing people grow within an organization. I like to see the consumer relate to our product. So I think it's one of those things that when you're in this business, you love the business, you love the consumer, And even though you can't necessarily directly relate to the product, you can relate to the brand. And I think, again, it's all about the brand, and I think that's super important to me. And that's basically been how I look at that and how I think about the brands that I'm involved in. Any other questions? Katie Ferraro. Thank you. She liked the presentation. Thank you, Katie. I'm hoping one of you guys will give me a question that really stumped me. Stump the star, as they say. All right. Well, again, I think we're pretty well wrapped up here. I think I can let all you guys go back to work. I haven't got any other questions. And again, if you have other questions that maybe you haven't thought about, go ahead and submit those to Kate, and certainly she will be able to respond or pass that on to me, and I'd be happy to respond to you. Again, best of luck to all of you. We've got the whole show season coming up, and I think that that's always one of the most exciting parts of being in this business is releasing the new line, releasing the new marketing, and seeing all of you guys at trade shows. So again, best of luck to everybody, and thank you for attending the webinar today.